Mark Mormon?
Is this, who's talking? Is this Alyssa?
Yeah.
Are you calling from a garage or something?
No, I'm right by my computer.
Well, everything was quiet and organized, and then you signed on and all hell broke loose.
Yeah, can't hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure why. Yeah.
I think you said my name, and if you did, I'm here.
Mark Mormon?
Here, I can barely hear you.
Looks like everybody's present except for Ryan, so we can move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, thanks. Consider the May 6th meeting minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments or adjustments? If not, I'll consider a motion. For approval.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 3, consider recommendation for employee handbook social media usage policy 600-12. So Nick, are you in charge of this, or Wade, or who's going to talk on it from staff?
Sure, I can start. Wade did a lot of work on this, so he can certainly fill in anything I missed. But as we're looking to use social media for village purposes, we just want to set out guidelines to make sure it's being used correctly by our employees, to make sure they're not doing anything they shouldn't do, especially when they're representing the village. And that's the main goal of this policy, is to set out procedures for that.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments on this policy?
I'm surprised we don't have a policy like this already. Is this the first, or is this just addition to what we already have?
I think the only thing we have is regarding use of social media on village time for like personal purposes. This is our first time really talking about the use of village social media and representing the village.
Okay.
Mark, we haven't historically used social media as a village, so I think that's why there hasn't been a policy in the past, but we're actually setting up village social media accounts now.
Okay, I was going to ask that.
Well, I have a couple of comments. First of all, it doesn't mention in the media policy itself that it's for anyone other than employees. However, in the notes that we received to go along with our village board meeting following this, it mentions that it's for employees and trustees, which surprised me. Then if we end up that's going to be the case, I think the scope should be all employees and elected officials. However, I looked at McFarland, Monona, Waunakee, and Janesville to see if any or some included trustees or elected officials, whatever they may have, and none of them do. There's no mention. Now, I'm not saying a category, maybe ethics, or when we swear in our oath. You know, I mean, I think we're supposed to use good judgment. So either this has to include trustees or not include trustees, and be specific about it. I personally do not think it should include trustees. I know that's number one. Number two, section 2, it has solicitation of commerce. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but so I have a question. Pardon me?
Could somebody scroll up the, it's on the screen right now so we can see section 2? Thank you.
Right here, solicitation of commerce. Now, to me, that means if you're trying to sell something or whatever. My question is, I know that we're looking for, to get bids for new cleaning service. And I had found one a year ago, but we can't track what I found. It's too difficult. So I had suggested to Kathy that we put it on, there's Dane County, there's Mount Horeb Classified, and there's, a third one, Madison maybe Classified. And there are many that advertise their businesses there. Or we could put in that we're looking for that. So if that's what solicitation of commerce means, I don't know if that should be excluded. Also, it could mean, what if we want to sell something? I know we usually use the auction house, but let's say we have old desks, I don't know, but something like that we would want to sell. I mean, I think the village should be allowed to do that. I mean, we're in the 20th century now.
And this is in reference to people making comments on our posts. So if we post something that says, village has picnic tables available for people to sit on, and someone hops on there and says, I'm selling picnic tables, everybody should contact me if they want their picnic tables. Here's my name, address, phone number, I'm selling picnic tables. That we have the right to go on and remove that comment. Because we're not endorsing them as a company, we're not endorsing them as a seller.
Okay.
So
that's what this means.
Yeah. So this is more content restrictions. If someone comments, we'll save. We have something in place where we can save those comments, so we can open records or someone wants to look. We'll save the comments, but we're going to delete if anyone's trying to use the village site to sell personal items.
Okay, but this would not prohibit anybody from the village either looking for services such as Kathy posting for, get a RFP for cleaning services. The village would be able to do that.
That would be something that could go through either myself or Rowan, and then to Nick to see if it's appropriate or not to post.
Okay, but so we would be allowed to do that if the right approvals were gained.
Yeah.
Okay. I see that. I think one value in having this is that it's making employees accountable into how they handle social media, both professionally through their jobs and personally. I think that's good. How do others feel on this about including elected officials?
Well, I guess my feeling is if it's an employee handbook, an employee policy, it doesn't really apply to, there ought to be another way of holding village elected officials accountable, but not through the employee handbook.
Well, we're on the payroll. I mean, we get a paycheck.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then all the other policies would apply to you. And some of, it seems to me that most of those are for people who are employed as their main job, working for the, for the village. If there's a code of ethics or if there's a regulations that apply to village elected officials, shouldn't that be separate?
Nick, does that come up? You know how you have that, maybe it's Wade now, I don't know, the trustee orientation booklet that you give out new people?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is social media addressed in that? Or could it be addressed in that?
I think it could be addressed in that. Right now, I think it only discusses like walking quorum situations. It doesn't talk about comments specifically on social media.
Okay, and what is your ultimate goal here? I think we have a little bit of time we can talk about this. Is it wrong if somebody, because this is the thing, departments now, I've noticed, are posting more, the Parks and Rec or whatever, but they just do it so you only see it on Facebook if you're a friend of theirs. So what typically I do if I see it and it hasn't been shared, I'll share it to the 2 or 3 local sites that we have, because not everyone, right or wrong, belongs to the Parks and Rec Facebook page. But yet they were really happy when the pool reopened, or sad when the pool closed. I mean, I think people like to be notified. I think it's part of communication. So I think either I can continue sharing it, or whomever sees it first, or whoever is in charge of doing that puts it on one of our local sites.
Yeah,
Other than,
so I think that this was just from the back end to make sure that the content we're putting out is something that kind of represents the village and represents our staff. So it's certainly, it's up to you guys if you want to share or do whatever you want from the point that it's created and put on our site. Then,
Okay.
then we've kind of taken that approval step to say this is what we want out on behalf of the village. And that it can be shared from wherever. So certainly we know there's other avenues where people are going to get information, and we put stuff out on our website, and we put it in the newspaper, and so the social media is just kind of one more venue for us to disperse information that we want people from the village to be aware of.
okay, so I'm not going to be fired if I share these kinds of things. That's not my,
I have questions. Maybe we could go back a little bit. First of all, when we talk about social media, how many social media sites does the village have? In other words, are we talking about various departments having their own Facebook pages and things like that? That's the first question. And then the second question is, who is responsible for monitoring and accountable for the content of those pages?
Yeah, so at this point, the actual village sites are on Instagram, Facebook, and maybe one other. I think it's Instagram and Facebook are the 2 major ones right now. And that's between myself, Rowan Childs with Economic Development, and then Nikki Erickson, who's who's one of our admins downstairs, who kind of helps out a lot with utilities. So it's the 3 of us mainly who are creating and posting content at this point on those individual sites. But the police department has their own. I think Parks and Rec has an account. So there's a number of different other village accounts out there. This came up because we were kind of looking at streamlining that content of what's going out. So this policy would cover all of those different Facebook pages that exist on behalf of the village.
So how do you make sure that there's a common message?
By hopefully limiting the number of people who have access to it and are sharing. At this point, we haven't pulled in the reins on, I think there's a couple people at the police department who have the ability to post on behalf of the police department. And I don't know who, I think Jill just posts on behalf of Parks and Rec, and I don't know, once this is kind of in place, it gives us that framework to go back to them and say, hey, these are the things we want to consider. These are the types of things we want to post, and these are the types of comments we want to look out for and make sure that we delete or limit the ability for people to share those types of things.
And is that what you mean by limited public forum?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure. So the public will not be able to post comments back. There'll only be certain groups or individuals that are able to actually post on it. But to Kathy's point, like if somebody wanted to share it on a different Facebook page or what have you, it can be shared at our discretion.
It can be, yeah. We just want to make sure that we're monitoring any conversations that would take place with it. We can't stop people from tagging the village. Once we have accounts, we can be tagged. So someone can say, you tipped over my garbage cans, even though it's not us. You tipped over my garbage cans. Thanks a lot, Village of Mount Horeb. And they're still going to be able to tag us. But we're going to do our best to set up protocols to then follow up with people to make sure that, if we see something that's out there and they're tagging us in it, to follow up and gives us that opportunity to do some sort of customer service in that moment.
Did we answer Kathy's question about, and my question also about elected officials? in this policy. Otherwise, I guess my feeling is go with it and amend it if it, you know, if it needs amending.
Dave, so are the village officials going to be authorized to like post to this page, or is it going to be just a select few?
They can create content and bring it to one of us who has the ability to post, and we can post. But otherwise, essentially, they're not creating content, but they may be representing the village by commenting on something. So I think that's kind of what in section 3, we're looking at kind of representing you're on your own personal media account representing the village. So I know I see, you know, like Kathy, who will give the instance of posting information about the pool being reopened or not reopened or whatever it is. So sharing content we've already created is an easy one because we've approved it. We've put that content out there. The difficulty comes in the side conversations that occur on other social media, you know, on Trollway Confessions or one of those. Where people are identifiable as an employee or a trustee of the village and making comments on different things that may affect the village.
Well, trust me, both on a personal and elected official standpoint, I withhold many, many, many comments. So I use restraint. And I do that. I mean, I just think that's the right thing to do. And I know not a lot of people don't. I'm not talking about us. I'm just talking about people in general. I mean, it's become nuts.
Yeah.
But anyway, so getting back to my initial thing, and Dave's asking it again. So shouldn't it just be for employees? And if there's a trustee or more than one trustee that gets out of hand, frequently or whatever, that somebody, staff contact them and say, hey, you know, you gotta quit being like that.
Well, I think this is up to Nick, I guess, but I think we could have, this could be the handbook policy if you want to include something, Nick, in our trustee orientation or something, you know, about social media expectations or.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna say, Wade. I'm fine with this just being for employees, but I think we do need to make it clear to elected officials what's expected on social media.
Oh, I agree. And if it's in that, or even if you throw it in the orientation and say, hey, this is what our employees have to live with. And we would certainly hope that you as an elected official would abide by these rules too. But it's more, I mean, it's not as, we're not going to get fired. Oh, I don't know, but.
I think from a risk standpoint, I would recommend that they're abiding by the same rules because we have liability with elected officials doing things out there as well. The liability doesn't end with employees. So I think it would be smart to have it be official. Like these are the guidelines for social media use, even as an elected official.
I would agree. And again, we get a paycheck and I don't understand why. I mean, what's the big deal if so? Let me back up. So Wade, as an elected official, am I going to be given access to be able? So I'll be given access to be able to comment to these social media sites. But if I want to post something, I have to run that past you, Nikki, or the other person you mentioned. I forget. Yeah. Roland. Thank you. Okay. So all I can do is comment, and essentially. If I want to comment, then I need to read this policy and say, okay, is what I'm about to comment, is how I'm about to comment, does it fit within this policy?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, where this kind of comes up, and this hasn't happened that I'm aware of at least, but, you know, if someone makes a negative comment about the Mount Horeb Police Department, for instance, to hop on as an elected official and engage in conversation with someone about getting negative about the Mount Horeb Police Department. We're not saying we're Big Brother and everyone needs to believe the same way and do everything the same, but we're just asking that as someone who's representing the village, either as a trustee or as an employee, to find the right means to get that information back to the police department. You've got the voice, you've got the ability to do it, and to not engage on social media in those instances. That's kind of where this, I think, where it would fall into the trustee end.
Okay, I guess I don't see a problem with elected officials being included in this policy.
Okay, so is the next step that I ask for approval for us to recommend this to the board tonight? I mean, do I need a motion, Nick?
Correct, yes, that's what we're looking.
Okay, I'm looking for someone to make a motion and a second to recommend approval of this policy and procedure for social media to the village board at our meeting tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? So there's no second to approve this? Well,
Okay, what's the problem then?
Well,
yeah, I was gonna say, if we're not approving it, I'm just curious what the problem.
I'll second it. I mean, you've got to at least take it to the board for discussion.
Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstain? No? Okay. Thank you. Number 4, staff reports. Budget update.
I don't know if there are any questions on the June financial packet, the budget update packet that went out a couple weeks ago, but things look as we expect. We are about where we were last year. You know, this year we don't see a really huge impact from COVID yet. Where we do see the impact is rec. Rec has been hit the hardest, and the good thing about rec is we're also saving on expenses. So at least there is an expense savings with that loss of revenue. And then we did receive the funding from the CARES Act. So we submitted for that reimbursement. So that covers 118,000 of our costs that we incurred related to COVID.
Wow.
A lot of that time was labor and sick hours that we paid out for employees for COVID leave. So,
That's
you know,
good news.
That's
yeah,
great.
it's great. So I don't expect our financials to be out of whack this year. I expect we'll end the year about where we expected.
That's good.
Wow, they gave us 118,000? Wow.
Yep.
Think of a
It
big,
was,
I mean, my Lord. Thank you thank you and the staff for keeping track of all this stuff to submit, you know?
yep. Yeah, it was a pretty easy process. We were tracking from day one, so it was a pretty easy process once they opened up the form to claim reimbursement. So it went pretty smoothly. We are working on getting the draft budget ready right now for 2021. So we will start work on that in September. As in years past, I think the end of September is when we plan to start work with this team on that. And one question I do have, and I don't need an answer now, but if you could get back to me in the next couple weeks, I would like to only do the budget packets electronically, except for those who want the binder, want the paper, versus last year we did both. So if you could just let me know in the next couple weeks, if you want a paper binder, I will make you one.
On
Will
that
you
same,
assume that no, will you assume that if we don't reach out, that you'll just send it electronically?
Yes.
Correct.
And I will send it electronically to everyone regardless. So,
Okay.
yeah, everyone will get it electronically. So those that also want a binder, let me know.
Okay, perfect.
on that same note, I think it would be much easier and more organized if we could meet in person for the budget. I mean, you know how we're looking at numbers and we're referring, I mean, Nick, can't we make an exception? I mean, meeting every week looking at 183 pages in a size 3 font on a mile-long spreadsheet?
I'll see if we can meet in person. If we do, we're gonna have to comply with the mask order and social distancing. For a smaller committee, it might not be bad. I don't know how we would do the budget presentation by the department heads in person though, unless we meet outside in a park or something, but I can look into what we can do.
Well, I mean, how many roughly department heads are there? 8 or 9 or something?
Mhm.
Okay, so, and if we met in the normal boardroom and we're sitting enough far apart, just us as a committee, then we could have, what, 2 or 3 more in the boardroom at the moment at the same time? If they sat with 6 feet apart?
Yeah, I would have to look at what the numbers are from Dane County.
Okay, so let's say we have 2 or 3 in there, then as one leaves, because they're through, then the others are waiting either out in the hallway or in that other back conference room. And then they just come in.
Yeah, the other thing we have to keep in mind is we still have to leave it open to the public. So there's gonna have to be a way for the public to at least view it. And maybe that'll work on with the live recording and we don't do this go to meeting format.
Correct. Yeah, or they could come to the meeting if they want.
Can you do both?
We haven't found a way to do both yet.
And they could come to the meeting if we have too many people, then the department heads all wait outside. I mean, we've never had really anybody other than Destiny and library, Jessica. They usually come to the budget meeting, that's about it.
No, police come.
Who?
The police.
Well, when they're up. I mean, when their department maybe is up. But I'm talking about regular people off the street.
Oh,
I mean, we've never really historically had anyone even attend those meetings. And I just think, I mean, you know what it's like going through that budget with all those numbers and stuff.
Yeah, we'll look into ways we can make that happen.
Thank you, I'd appreciate it. It might help with evaluation. Okay, number 2, HR project update.
All right, so I will kind of walk you guys through the pages as they are and walk you through the projects that I'm working on with Amy and Nick and a number of other people. So you can see right there, this first page just kind of gives you a broad base of the different projects that are going on with me on board here. And you'll notice that the colors will match up with the top line of the projects as we get to them. So the first project, you'll see that we'll talk about tonight will be compensation, then performance management, then HR records. But really this first page is just to give you an idea of kind of how those fall over the next couple of years, so the rest of this year and all of 2021. The first one that we're sort of squarely in the middle of is compensation management. So you can see I kind of, on each of these, I put a current state. So what kind of made this project come to the forefront, and then the goal that we're sort of hoping to accomplish by addressing it. So for this compensation here, I think our staff, I think we did a good job in the past. I don't see a lot of wages that are way out of whack and those sorts of things, but it was handled on more of a, okay, we've got a position open, let's look at the position and figure out what's going on and what we should pay someone for it. So this will add kind of a little more structure to that. So we'll have pay grades. People will better understand sort of a minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum for their position. They'll be able to easily identify positions that are similar. So positions that have, you know, similar abilities to in decision making and effect on the end result and all of those sorts of things. So this will kind of add more structure to that, and then will be easily sort of aged over time, so we can look at cost of living increases and move those, once that final document's created, kind of move those pay grades along as time progresses. And then will give us the ability to sort of adjust and match up with other communities and see what they're paying, and be able to easily answer a question when we get asked sort of what our minimum, midpoint, and maximum is. We'll sort of know so that we can match up against other communities. And so where we were is reached out to several communities and got ideas about sort of how they handle this. I've also had experience doing this not for municipalities but for healthcare, which is a little different than this, because in healthcare our wages were, not everyone knew what everyone made. So here it's a little different because everyone knows what everyone makes all the time. But so I got that information. We sort of evaluated the way different groups looked at how to grade jobs and those sorts of things, and kind of narrowed it down. I then broke up all employee positions to department heads. And then first, me, Nick, and Amy took a stab at kind of grading positions, and I'll go through what that grading looks like in just a second. And then I left it out to department heads, met with each department head individually and talked about their positions and allowed them to grade the positions as well. And I've gotten all those back, and I'm starting to sort of build that final spreadsheet. And then from there, we'll sort of start designing what that final pay grade document will look like. So the pay grades will be, you know, sort of how far apart those different pay grades are, and then how wide they are. So in general, if you're looking at maybe a 6% difference between each pay grade and then 30% within the pay grade. So once that document's kind of created, then we'll start slotting where those positions belong based on how they scored. And then we'll sort of document as a village, what our goal is. If our goal is to, you know, either lag in pay, be at market value, or lead in pay. And so we'll be able to kind of know based on those ranges then when we're looking what our village theory is on how we want to pay our staff. So that'll kind of go into the document of plan document creation, document theory, grading techniques, and then when a new position gets brought to us or a new position is created, or we want to give someone a promotion into a different position, we'll kind of go through this process every time so that it's consistent. We'll grade the position between, like Nick and Amy and myself, and department heads will grade, so that we sort of know what we're looking to pay that position and what we want to bring them in at. And then, as kind of this process continues, we'll be bringing them back to you. I think our next meeting will have a much better idea of what all that data collected and put into different slots, so you guys have the ability to see kind of where our positions graded out to.
So what are we trying to accomplish with all this?
Yeah, so the goal is so that we kind of can create that theory around how we're paying, and we've got like positions combined. So we know, like for instance, we've got admins who work at the police station, who work at the rec department, and who work here. So grading out to see, is their work similar? Should we be paying all of them similarly? Is their work really not similar? And so there's some, maybe we need to incorporate that into a job description, or if we were to refill that position, understanding what skill sets we're looking for, so that we would know if someone has a high degree of decision making in their role, and we're paying someone, a lower wage, that we're making sure that the job matches the rate that we're paying someone. The expectations of that job match what we're paying them.
And also, another project Wade's going to talk about is performance management. And, you know, we've talked with this group before about trying to get to a place where we have merit-based increases versus cost of living increases. And in order to get to that place, this is sort of a baseline we need to get set, like have a kind of set compensation structure in place, so then we can make decisions about those, you know, performance increase or merit increases and things like that. And then we know kind of what our boundaries are for paying people differently than we have historically.
This would also set up for employees an expectation of knowing, I mean, there'll be cost of living increases, but that just if I worked for the village for the next, 30 years until I retire or whatever, I would, that I would eventually max out in pay, and I would have some idea of where that level is and where I would max out at. And then we could talk about, we haven't gotten to the theory then behind what we do if someone maxes out in a position. But that would be then what we would consider as part of the next part of the project is, what do we do then when someone has sort of maxed out in their role?
Nick, have we ever had someone who maxed out on pay?
We've never had a pay schedule
I
like
didn't
this.
think so.
No.
No. I don't know.
I think-
This is a lot of busy work here, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Mark, that's not the point. The point is that you have a staff now, and the purpose is to make people want to come and work for Mount Horeb. It's not about not wanting somebody to max out or stopping them from maxing out or anything like that. It's to put a plan in place to allow your employees to feel like they are a part of something bigger, that they've got a means to be able to grow within the community, within the jobs that they're doing within the village. It's not busy work at all. This is amazing and fantastic, and I'm really proud of what the staff is doing here. This is really great.
I will say also, it's putting some, this will hopefully put some definition on, we've got positions that are things like crew person 1 and crew person 2. And it's helping us kind of define what those positions are. So we know when we need to approve someone up to a crew person 2, we've got kind of those justifications in place to say, hey, they're no longer meeting those basic levels. They're not having more directed work. They've got more independence. They've, they're much more involved in decision making. There's less oversight. And so we've got that ability to request, a department head could come in and say, this person now fully meets kind of what our expectations are for crew person 2. And justify that kind of increase for their employee.
I like it. I think Wade has done a great job. I think it holds employees accountable without having a system and the way raises have been done in the past. It's not fair to the people that are really engaged in their work and they're working hard, because they're going to sort of get the same pay that Joe Schmo's getting, who's just lazy and takes breaks constantly and it never goes beyond the call of duty. That's not right. And maybe if we have any of those employees, I'm not saying we do, I don't know, but by having this in place, number one, it'll maybe give them drive to succeed. Number two, it will create an avenue to formally give them notices and get rid of them and hire somebody that's, going to do the job. I think we have, any place I've worked that has a reasonable amount of employees, you strive to have something like this in place.
Absolutely.
If you look on the next, as you scroll down a little bit, there's how we went, like the theory and the process behind this. I didn't make this all up on my own. It's a system that's been proven and that other villages have used. But it sort of looks at, we're selecting a skill level for each position, and then all the factors that follow into it are on the other pages. And so you're looking at not the employee who's currently in the position, but what a satisfactory employee in that position would grade out to be. So if you're looking for someone who's got minimal experience or considerable experience in the job to feel like they're at a satisfactory level. And if at some point we determine that a satisfactory employee should be making the midpoint or 75th percentile or whatever it is, we've got those numbers out so that we kind of aren't taking a stab every single time we hire someone at what we're going to pay them. We sort of know if someone comes in and they don't have a lot of experience in what they were looking at, that maybe we're paying them at the 25th percentile for that position. So just kind of put some structure around that so we know what's going on. But I included all of those pages for you guys to see kind of how we're going through and breaking down and grading each job. So you can see a little bit about the theory behind that.
One question I had, Wade, is on page 8, in the skill set area. You've got the number of staff, 0 through up to 99. Does that mean, I didn't understand why we have that breakdown?
Yeah, so it's to capture things like how many direct reports that person has. So if you think about someone like Jill at the pool, who doesn't have a lot of full-time direct reports, she only has one, but has seasonal direct reports, it kind of gives some structure to how you give the position points based on how many direct reports that position may or may not have. Whether that staff is occasional, limited, or continuous, or a volunteer staff, or whatever it might be. So there's, if you think about like Alyssa's got a lot of election folks who will really just help out a few times a year, but there is some level of value in her being able to lead and train and retain that staff as well. So that kind of allows for that. Okay, thanks.
I think that, this plan seems sustainable. I mean, I may have asked you this when we met previously on this, but is there a group back in the dark ages when I worked in compensation analyst, I was a compensation analyst. I belonged to a group called LIMRA, which was for life insurance companies, and it was nation. And so we would compare job positions locally and then nationally. Now, I know we're not that big, but I didn't know if HR directors have that.
Yes, I belong to a couple different SHRMs, so it's a Society of Human Resource Managers, and they have a local chapter, so in Madison. So I belong to those, and you can get some wage and data information from them, so at least we can see positions that are more widely used, things like a payroll specialist or an admin or something like that. We can get good information from. Where they don't have good information is like they don't all have police chiefs. So those are a little more specialized, and I'm doing a little more reaching out to villages. And there's a lot of places that are willing to share information. I mean, you could find it if you dig anyway, and so most places are pretty willing to share kind of their pay grades and where everyone falls in their positions. So I get a lot of information from talking with other finance directors or other HR folks from local or like municipalities.
There's also a survey that MEUW puts out for utilities and village leadership roles each year. And that's very specialized because it's Wisconsin utilities. So we get that data every year as well that we use.
Okay, because I think it's good to look not just at municipalities for jobs that could be, like, say, the administrative assistant positions. I mean, I don't know if it's that important that we look at other municipalities, because there's a lot of, administrative assistant positions and accounts payable people and all that kind of stuff that has nothing to do with working at the village. It has to do with.
Those are positions too that I'll call up a place like Robert Half or some of those other staffing firms and just make sure that we're sort of in line with what they're seeing, because they're seeing a lot of churn and staff turnover, and they're willing to share kind of their wage data on what their people who are looking for jobs are looking for, and that gives us a pretty good idea of what we would need to pay.
Okay, are you going to go over the next part?
Yeah, so the next one is performance management. So we just went through our performance management this year, which is a process by which staff evaluates themselves, and then they meet with their managers, and then they're given a number grade. That's kind of our existing performance management. It doesn't affect pay. It doesn't do anything. It just is more of a check-in to make sure that things are going well, or if there's areas you need to improve on. And I think the goal for us is to create more of a culture where there's more regular performance management with staff. So if the staff person's not meeting expectations, hopefully people aren't waiting until their July check-in or whatever it is. So this is kind of starting at the top. So starting with department heads and rolling out a new way of kind of goal setting and performance management that allows for more goal-based. So we're going to be using kind of, if you worked other places that use SMART goals, it's going to look like that. I mean, we're going to do more goal setting from department heads, and then those regular check-ins with their supervisors. So with Nick, Kathy, Amy, we'll have a little more structure to making sure that we hold department heads accountable for what they were hoping to accomplish and the goals that they've set, and checking in on a more regular basis and giving more of a, how far are we along on this goal? Are we good? Are we lagging? Do we need help? Those sorts of things, so that we make sure that as a village, myself and Nick will have the ultimate look at the SMART goals as they come in, to make sure that no one's goals are obviously competing or whatever. I mean, we want to make sure the village is moving forward and that the goals are attainable and are going to benefit sort of the village as a whole and different departments. I think as our community continues to grow, it's even more important to make sure that these goals are set and reached and are worked out very closely with Nick and Amy and Kathy and myself. So this kind of lays out that process for looking at setting SMART goals. So I'll be meeting with managers. I've already given them kind of a heads up that this is coming, talked a little bit about SMART goals. I've just included some basic information in there for you about kind of a form I've used in the past and what I've found successful. And this will be kind of our first foray into being able to make performance-based decisions on pay versus across the board raises. And then once we go through this process with department heads, the following year, then we would roll it out with all staff. So the department heads have had the opportunity to go through this process and set goals and have more regular check-ins with their supervisor, more documented regular check-ins. And then roll this out to all of their staff. And it's going to look different for different departments potentially. We haven't gotten kind of down the road far enough to know what it'll look like for each level of staff, but this is sort of where we're going, at least with the department head side of it.
Do we treat, because they're all, how do we handle the police department? Are the union people, they just do their own thing?
Yeah, going through the same process that all of us went through at this point. The SMART goals would be something that certainly Doug would be working on, potentially with Nate. But they're also, this year we asked them as they were doing their performance check-ins to ask the officers what kind of a process that they would find beneficial to them, so that we can make sure that we're doing something, because at this point I don't know that the officers find a lot of value in the current way that we handle it. So kind of getting ideas from them about when we do make that change, what could it look like for police officers, or what could it look like for public works? What would it look like for all the different departments?
But as far as compensation, they're different because of the union contract.
Does that mean like the non-union people are also treated differently? Like Nate and Doug?
Well, non-union people will be part of this, what we're talking about right now.
Okay, then HR records.
Yeah, so.
I just real quick comment and more of just a suggestion, something to think about. So one of the things, I know this is local, but in the company I work for, one of the things that we have done that I really appreciate is when we think about merit and we think about merit being tied to goals or personal performance, one of the things I would recommend you being careful of is making goals that spread out for the entire year. as things change throughout the year, those goals might be hard to hit if initiatives change. And so what we've done is now we've split those goals out on a quarterly basis. So, you know, you've got 2 or 3 goals for this quarter and 2 or 3 goals for this quarter. And so it's a little more streamlined. And then you have to get it done quicker too. So you're not just waiting, until the end of the year to get things done. Or again, if goals or initiatives change throughout the year, you don't have a goal that you set back in January that no longer pertains to what you're trying to do in November or December. So just something to think about as you're doing the goals is maybe try to break them out quarterly.
Good
Yeah.
idea.
And I think hopefully some of that will help with more regular check-ins with the supervisor too, so that if you come to those meetings and the meetings are quarterly, you've at least got some idea of, you can have that open conversation about, hey, we set this goal and it's not moving forward, or it's not right at this point. But yeah, I will certainly take that into consideration.
Thank you, Beth.
Yep.
All right, and then the last one, HR records. So we're just kind of going through, I went through a few files today already, and just kind of going through a checklist to see that we've got everything that we say that we've got for our employees, and making sure that items that are of personal nature aren't in the main files. So things that have like social security numbers and bank accounts and that sort of stuff. And just kind of looking at everything and cleaning it up and make sure we've got what we think we're supposed to have in the files. And then at some point, included in this process will be kind of how we onboard new staff. So we're hoping to get to a point where we can digitize most of these things. So that, if I get notice that there's a new hire starting, I can send them a link to a website and they'll be able to fill out a majority of that information that'll be saved electronically. But we don't know what that state's going to look like yet, but really just at this point going through and seeing what's in the files that we currently have. The first 2 I went through today were employees that have been here since the 90s. So there was a lot of information to go through and to look at, and to kind of put in place and put in order. We'll also start organizing the files so that we kind of know if I'm looking for workers' comp information, where I'm going to find that in what folder and what area of the folder. So that's kind of where we're at. I've created kind of a basic checklist of what I should be looking for in each file, and then I'm doing it in an Excel kind of checklist on what's actually in there and what might be missing, or what I'm not seeing in the file to see if it exists somewhere else. But initially the files were lived in Amy's office, in Kathy's office, and some of them in my office. So now they're almost all living in my office, minus the medical files at this point.
It's a good feeling to get organized.
Yeah, it's nice to start going through all of them, so.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else, any other comments on Wade's report?
Very impressive.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Wade.
Thank you. I'm gonna log off then. You guys have a wonderful rest of the night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, Wade.
Okay, now my favorite thing, the vendor list.
Dog licenses?
Oh, yeah, dog license.
That must be second favorite. So the vendor list has the updates. All the department heads got back to us. The ones in orange are the ones that were reviewed this year by department heads. So this is the list with the notes of, what the outcome was of the reviews.
I have a question. The very first one, office, you make these so damn small. Complete offices of Wisconsin. We spent $71,000 this year or last year. Is that tell me, is that include some of the furniture for all the remodels?
I'd have to look it up, which I can do. So you can talk about something else and I'll see if there's anything big out there with them.
It's like a $68,000 increase. I mean,
yeah, I know because the police department moved, and this is 2019 spending. Yeah, so the police department moved We increased village office space, and then the rec department moved. So I know there were more office supplies purchased in 2019 due to those moves,
Right.
but I don't know that all of that is that.
Okay, and I really hope that we get, we get bids from like a different appraisal company when that comes up. I mean, I just think, and then I read in the note, like on Strand, well, everyone talked and they all like Strand. Well, that's fine to like Strand, and yeah, they know all of our stuff, but I just think, if nothing more, it keeps these companies, I mean, they can get lazy with us because they have no reason not to. There's no worry. I mean, we're like putty. They're like putty in our hand. I mean, I think we need to keep on top of this stuff and get some quotes. And I still wonder if we can't get discounts. I brought this up numerous times from or whatever the amount of money is we get back from Cenex, always using them. And now that we're going to have, 6 gas stations or whatever we're going to have, I mean, try to cut a deal with them, with Quick Trip or with Casey's. I mean, because we're a big account. And say, what can you do for me? And go to all 3 of them. Because now we're going to have 3 and see what they can do. But enough on my soapbox. Okay. Anyone else have comments on the vendor list?
Kathy,
Kathy,
there's
there's quite a few vendors on here whose expenses have gone up significantly.
Yeah. But it could be.
It's more than just the one you mentioned.
Well, I know, but sometimes there's certain jobs that, we expected to spend more money. That's why it's hard.
Yeah, you can't really just compare year over year because we do different things with different vendors each year. Like sometimes it's an every other year thing that, are you looking at some in particular, Mark?
Well, I guess this is something that is important to me. So I guess we'll start at the top. Mount Hope Telephone Company, why would that have changed?
We got a whole new phone system last year. So we now, I mean, we had to, because we had like an antique system, the kind that, it was all hardware. So we now have voice over IP and we have like a modern system. So that costs money to get set up on.
Civic Systems LLC tripled in cost, software and licensing.
Yeah, and Alyssa, what is that? What is that one for?
That's for, it's for water department software. I don't know why it's not.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah, my connection's poor.
No, I think it's Alyssa's.
Alyssa, there's a little chat icon at the top. If you want to just type in, looks like a little bubble that you would like, a voice bubble. If you want to type in there, we will be able to see what you enter.
Yeah. It's for the water utility. They had an upgrade that they did last year because 4,000 of that increase last year, Mark, was for an upgrade to the water utility, but I can't speak in an educated manner on what it is, but.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The computer and networking solutions almost doubled. Would that be new computers for our new offices?
That's some of it.
That's 40,000.
That's our outsourced IT. So because we had all the office moves, especially the police department last year, that was getting us set up a new office space. So a lot of that is man hours of our outsourced IT, but some of it is computers.
40,000 is like a lot of money, but.
Well, and one thing on that might be worth looking at is, I mean, separating out how much of that is equipment costs versus how much of it is support. If a lot of that is support, you could hire an IT person for that amount.
Right, good point.
And what about getting quotes from different auditors? I mean, I thought silly me, I thought our audit fees were around 35,000. I'm obviously way off.
Well, this includes utilities too. So we have a village audit and then we have 3 utility audits. So it's not just the village audit. That's maybe where maybe you were thinking of the fees for one or the other, village or utilities.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm okay. But again, Baker Tilly, I mean, accounting firms are a dime a dozen. I mean, correct? I mean, you can just get quotes from other accounting firms.
I think it's important to note too that we do have frequency and year for review, and Baker Tilly is up for review in 2023.
Well, I know that, but how long have we had Baker Tilly?
That's
looks
in
like
the
it
next
was-
column. 2018 was when, I guess it was last renewed. They've been here for 5 years at least.
Well, right. So I mean, I don't think they're new. I think we've had them since I started. Unless the audit guy we use changed firms or something. I don't know. I don't know who they are, but just because, I mean, if we've had them for 10 years and they're not up for review, I don't know.
I mean, there's, when you put things out to bid, that's why we did this. We're trying to space it out so we can actually do them correctly. We can't, it's hard to put everything out to bid all at the same time. So, that's part of this process and why we set this up. Now, if we think that there's an issue, obviously, before this timeline, then we will look at it before the timeline, for sure. But if things are going smoothly with the vendor, our plan is to review them according to this schedule.
Okay, and I think I'm right in saying this. Maybe I shouldn't get so enthusiastic about all this, because isn't this relatively new that we're organized with this whole vendor list?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is sort of a new thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so it's a means of getting organized. Okay, I will be less energetic about this then. Now,
Do you think it would help to have a 3rd year of expenses here? The only reason I ask that is, I mean, some of these items like general communications, our expense went from 24,000 to 82,000. And I see we bought new radios for the police department. But I'm curious to know, was the number in 2018 similar to the number in 2017? I understand why it went up, but where was it in 17, I wonder?
Well, I think if we're looking, so the purpose of this list was to look at all those vendors that we spend. I think the threshold we used was 5,000. Yeah, 5,000. To look at those vendors that we in recent years have spent 5,000 with, and then make a point to review them and make educated choices on if we continue to work with them or not. And it's really a way just for this group and for Nick and Kathy and I to see where all the spending, like who the spending is all with. But I think as far as looking at it from an expense, like a year-over-year expense, I think a better thing to focus on is the financial statements, because the financial statements show us total spending in each area. This is just looking at one vendor. So if we look at what we spent general communications in 2017, that would give us information for that specific vendor, but it wouldn't necessarily tell us what has the total spending been on police department equipment or whatever this category or count is. And I think that's really what we should manage to, is the financial statements, not to individual vendors. Does that make sense?
Well, I find it interesting looking at all these numbers here for these individual companies. I wouldn't have seen this otherwise. Like Kathy's point, I would have no idea that we paid the accounting firm 76,000,
Well, we
where
should
would we lump
maybe,
that in? It would just get lumped in a figure.
well, it's in the
Never know
financial,
what it
it's in,
was.
it's in the budget update under, accounting, I believe.
But like, how many more numbers are in that total?
Well, what do you mean? How many more numbers? Actually, the financial, the budget update, you actually see it by, you see what part is in the general fund. So for example, the accounting line item in the general fund is 37,000, which is probably, to your point, Mom, Kathy, that you thought it was 36,000 because it is for the general fund, for the village audit. So then the remainder is for utilities. So I think, I think it's critical to look at the overall financial situation versus honing in on each individual vendor, just because vendors change. I mean, we put things out to bid and, it doesn't give you a full financial picture if you're just looking at one vendor.
Well, I think 3 of our important vendors haven't changed for a long, long time.
Right.
The accountant, the lawyer, and the village planner. And maybe I'm wrong, but they've been around a long time.
The law firm, not the lawyer. We have a
Law
newer,
firm. Yeah, Stafford.
right.
Yeah.
I know, and that's my whole point. I'm really happy we have this system, and I really hope that we do what we say we're gonna do. And even if the people like them, that's fine, but I think it's important.
Kathy, I think there's some value to be had with consistency, like with an accounting firm, let's say, from year in and year out. But at the same time, I think it's important that we at least try and keep them honest with, maybe obtaining a bid from another firm. But, with that said, I think there's some value when, they've worked with us as long as they have. I think that there's some importance there too.
I agree. It's like changing banks. I mean, you shop around for a bank and then say you're going to switch, and it's a pain to do that. It really is.
With that said, I think it's important that we at least get a bid once in a while to make sure we know that we're being treated fairly.
Correct. That's my whole point.
Yeah, Kathy.
We all agree. Dave.
Yeah, to kind of underscore your point and Mark's point, I used to work for an accounting firm. And I can tell you that one of the worst things that happens is when they lose an audit, because they plug us and everybody else in to their budget. And they will lowball themselves if they think that they're going to lose it, especially if they know there's competition for it. Otherwise, they're just relying on the fact that they've got that revenue stream year after year. So I think both of you are absolutely right. How often do you do it? Maybe every 3 or 5 years?
Yeah, we have that one down for 5.
Yeah, I think that's what this whole new system is doing. And I hope that we live up to what we're saying we're going to do and get some quotes. And I would like the finance committee to see them when they start coming in. So, is there anything else on this? Okay. Thanks, Amy, for doing this vendor thing. Future agenda item. I just want to remind everyone to get Nick's valuation in by Friday, August 21st, to Kathy. She sent those all out, and you can just do it, online, and then email it to her. So are we not meeting in September, we as a committee? Because are you all meeting with the department heads starting the end of September? Or are we meeting in September because of budget?
I don't think we need to meet because of budget, but if there's other agenda items, And are we doing my review in September? I guess I don't know the timeline for that.
Well, I don't know if that will be, Kathy had to work out, as she said in her email thing. We'll have to figure out how to have a closed session. And that'll just be for, Dave and Mark, as part of the finance committee, will submit that, their evaluation, and then the rest will be to the board. So I don't know, she's gonna have to figure that out. I mean, will we have maybe a special meeting and we could just do it in closed session, like over at the village hall? Yes, with distance and masks and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if it'll be, if she wants it before the village board meeting or after the village board meeting or the following week, whatever. She hasn't decided. But we'll keep you in the loop, Nick.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I do think go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna say, if we don't have an agenda item, we don't need to meet, but if something comes up that there's a reason, hopefully everybody saves the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, the things that, from my perspective, I thought maybe on there are, Wade was planning on presenting, like the draft pay grade document that he talked about today, like the different pay grades and what that looks like. And then, also Nick and I are working on a debt management policy that we're hoping to present at that meeting as well in September.
I'm all in favor of debt management, mainly reduction. No, I don't have a problem with the September meeting at all. I wanted to make sure, I don't think we start the budget stuff until.
No, like
Yeah.
the 30th, I think, is our first meeting for budget.
Yeah, okay, and then it'll be every week. As Mark Nortman will know. Okay, any other thing anyone wants to bring up? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, thank you all. I enjoyed all of our discussions.